basically whatever the hell I want. Hello, everybody. As you probably heard in the intro, I do whatever the hell I want on this channel, but I will be concentrating mostly on the spooky, horror, paranormal, ghosts, things like that. Anything to do with horror, basically. However, I do have a big amount of different interests that I would like to also do on here. So don't be surprised if I kind of throw a wrench in it a little bit every once in a while. Today, though, we're going to check out real evil people who made friends with demons. This is from Most Amazing Top 10, so let's check it out.
Evil has existed since the dawn of time. Today we explore some of the twisted stories of real people who made deals with the devil, or at least believed that they did. From notorious killers who claimed to have made pacts with the devil, to those who blamed their crimes on demonic possession, these are real people who claimed to make pacts with demons. In 2001, Manuela and Daniel Ruda, a couple, committed a very horrific crime. They were responsible for the death of their very own friend, Frank Hackert. They believed Hackert was so amusing that he would make the perfect court jester for Satan. The Rudas were deeply involved in occult practices and would apparently sleep in graveyards and go to devil-worshipping ceremonies. And you know what? Nothing wrong with liking spooky stuff, just as long as it doesn't go too far. And in this case, it definitely did. Their fascination with the occult ended in a series of violent rituals that they subjected their friend to, ultimately leading to his death. After killing him, they placed his body in a coffin that they were using as a coffee table. They even attempted to dismember his remains, but were then caught before they could fully dispose of the evidence. In 2002, both Manuela and Daniel were convicted of the crime. Daniel was sentenced to prison, while Manuela was committed to a psychiatric institution. Richard Ramirez,
they both were already
known as the
screwed
Night
up,
Stalker,
obviously.
one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. Unlike most serial killers, Ramirez's crimes were very random. There's just no clear pattern to his method other than brutality for the sake of brutality. He'd attack men, women, old, young. He's responsible for a ton of home invasions, violent attacks, SA, and of course, killings. He also viewed himself as a servant of Satan, leaving symbols of the occult at his crime scenes like
that baffles me.
During his trial, he famously flashed a pentagram tattoo on his palm, claiming his allegiance to the devil. He believed that he was carrying out the will of Satan, claiming that his acts were a form of worship. He often used the phrase "Satan is great" to justify his actions. Gilles de Rais was born in 1405 in France. He's known for a lot of things. He was a wealthy nobleman, a knight, a leader in the French army during the 100 Years' War, a good friend of Joan of Arc, and one of the most prolific serial killers in history. Around 1432, Gilles de Rais began withdrawing from society, pursuing some of his darker hobbies in secret. And it was at this time that, coincidentally, boys around his castle began to go missing. And when witnesses started noticing bodies being buried by Gilles de Rais' staff members, it became pretty clear that something very dark was going on, but no one was prepared for how truly disturbing things would turn out to be. It turned out Gilles de Rais had a slight obsession with the occult, especially alchemy. In medieval Europe, alchemy was often viewed as a form of black magic. Gilles ended up employing an alchemist from Tuscany named Francois Prelati, who claimed to have a special connection to a demonic entity he called the Baron. Prelati promised that he could summon this spirit to help Gilles with his magical practices. He began providing Prelati with body parts from his young victims, gruesome offerings that would apparently help conjure this demonic entity. It didn't work, and Gilles de Rais was executed for his crimes on October 26th of 1440. He'd taken the lives of 140 boys, possibly and probably far more than that. In 2015, in the small town of Dudley, England, a 65-year-old pensioner named Peter...
It makes me wonder, like, what's he going through now? Was it all worth it? I'm gonna say no.
Was attacked by a young man named Tommy Smith, who later claimed that he'd been possessed by a demon. In reality though, Smith just wanted the old man's Range Rover. Peter Churn was in his garage when this possessed Smith wildly attacked him with a blade. The attack was so vicious that his weapon actually snapped in two. Miraculously, Churn survived the attack but suffered a stroke as a result and was blinded in one eye, along with having several slash and stab wounds to his head, chest, neck, back, and ears. Churn later said in court that Tommy Smith had been waving the blade around like a kung fu sword. The old man managed to fight Smith off though. He started pressing on the guy's eyes but blacked out after that from his injuries obviously. Luckily his son came out of the house though, at which point the devil-possessed blade wielder took off running. The court obviously didn't believe his whole possession story, but instead of prison, Tommy was sentenced to a mental health hospital.
He's just evil. That's all it is.
If I wished
Plain
I
evil.
could pay a visit to your city every night, at will I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death. That's just one line from a letter published in the paper on March 13th, 1919, written by a man calling himself the Axeman, one of the first modern-day serial killers. The Axeman claimed to be a demon who resided in hell, and his letter acted as a warning to the people of New Orleans that he would kill again if people didn't blare jazz music from their homes on the night of March 19th. Well, the 19th came around, and sure enough, jazz was heard in every home and dance hall throughout the night, and no one was killed. The identity of this mysterious Axeman was never found, but he took the lives of 6 people, leaving 6 others injured, between May of 1918 and October of 1919. Many of his victims were Italian immigrants. He'd quietly sneak into people's homes in the dead of night, bludgeoning them with his axe. Then, as suddenly as the killings began, they just stopped. Sean Sellers had a very troubled upbringing. His mother was very young when she had him. His father wasn't really in the picture. His grandfather and uncle also put him through severe mistreatment. On several occasions, Sellers' uncle would force him to wear soiled diapers on his head just to humiliate him. By the time he was in 10th grade, he and his family had moved 30 times. Sellers began taking a keen interest in the occult and claimed to have been possessed by a demon on March 5th, 1986, when he snuck into his mother and stepfather's room with a firearm and killed them both. According to him, he'd also carried out an occult-like ritual before deciding to take their lives. The year before this, he'd killed a Circle K convenience store clerk, Robert Paul Bauer, because he'd refused to sell him beer. In 1986, he was sentenced to death for his crimes, making him the youngest criminal ever sentenced to death in America since 1976, a record he still holds to this day. His death sentence wasn't carried out until 1999. In his 13 years in jail, he'd become a born-again Christian, and just 2 days before his death, Sellers wrote in his diary that he was amazed at the, quote, self-righteousness he still encountered from people who didn't know him. Going on to write, "People, for one moment, get your eyes off my sins and look at your own. You want to harp on something that happened 13 years ago. 13 years. In February of 2016, Jason Dalton, who was working as an Uber driver in Kalamazoo, Michigan, went on a shocking spree that left 6 people dead and 2 others injured. What makes this case particularly unsettling is the way Dalton tried to explain his actions during police interrogations. On the night of his spree, Dalton picked up and dropped off passengers, and in between doing this, randomly started shooting at people on the street. He killed 62-year-old Mary Lou Nye, her sister-in-law Joe, 74-year-old Dorothy Brown, 68-year-old Barbara Hawthorne, and father and son Richard and Tyler Smith. When police questioned him, Dalton claimed that the Uber app had somehow taken over his mind and body, stating, "I know you guys are gonna have a hard time believing this, but it literally took over my mind and body." He then described seeing symbols, including the Eastern Star and a horned devil head that would appear on his phone. Dalton received life in prison for his crimes. On September 10th of 2015, a body was discovered in an abandoned car in the Whitestone area of Queens, New York. The victim was 28-year-old Angie Escobar. The medical examiner determined that Angie had been killed about 4 days before her body was found. The New York Police Department quickly identified Luis Zambrano as the prime suspect. He was arrested on September 18th after fleeing to Virginia, but he didn't take long to confess to the crime. Zambrano admitted that he had attacked Angie with a pair of scissors after she told him him she wanted to break up. Zambrano also claimed that he'd been possessed by a demon at the time of the attack. In April 2016, he was convicted.
I think a lot of times that's just an excuse.
20 years in prison. On top of that, he was also convicted of an unrelated burglary charge, which added another 3 years to his sentence. I wonder if Satan told him to do that as well. Peter Curtin, often referred to as the Vampire of Dusseldorf, one of the most notorious serial killers in German history, active from February to November of 1929 in the city of Dusseldorf. He had a fascination with people's red bodily fluids and would often drink the BLOOD of his victims, hence his nickname. He carried out several brutal killings and other very disturbing crimes I can't really get into detail on. When he was finally apprehended, though, Curtin confessed to his crimes in detail, describing how he felt exhilarated during his crimes. Ultimately, he was convicted and sentenced to beheading in 1931. Between 1976 and 1977, David Berkowitz, aka the Son of Sam, terrorized New York City with a series of shootings that left 6 people dead and several others injured. One of the strangest parts about the Son of Sam case, though, was Berkowitz's bizarre claim that a demonic dog was instructing him to commit his crimes. He believed this dog, belonging to a neighbor, was possessed and sent by the devil to give him orders. Berkowitz's letters to the police and the media were filled with all these cryptic messages and references to his supposed connection with the supernatural. He also said he was in a satanic cult. During his arrest, he infamously stated that he was just following orders from this demonic entity in the dog. And the Son of Sam became a name that would haunt headlines for years. After his capture, Berkowitz was diagnosed with various mental health issues, but he continued to insist that he was acting under the influence of some sort of evil force. In 1978, he pled guilty to his crimes and was given 6 consecutive 25 years to life sentences, one for each of his crimes. He's still alive and in prison to this day. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.
Well, I find true crime stuff like that really, really interesting. I hope you guys do. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. Now it's time for a joke. They say that a banana is a good way to clean your colon. They forgot to mention you're supposed to eat it.